Hey everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, I'm a watercolor artist and painter specializing in watercolors with sort of a vintage charm in them. Today I'm going to be painting this martini glass that I found a reference of on unsplash.com. I'm using some of this drawing gum, which is basically like a liquid latex, and I'm using it on the areas of my painting where I don't want my paint to touch. That's because with watercolor, you utilize the white of the paper for your highlights, and so this is my way of planning my highlights so I don't mess them up later. When you paint glass, it's kind of important to maintain those highlights, so it's easiest if you just kind of fill those in before we get painting. For this, I'm painting on my MEEDEN art pad, which is 100% cotton paper, and using this big round size 3 Polina bright brush that I love. And I'm just going to start section by section when I paint with glass because it is a very overwhelming thing to paint. There's a lot of little highlights, little details, and so it's definitely a lot easier to just go section by section. For me, I start with the easiest, so this little back section behind the liquid looked like the simplest section of the entire painting. So we're just going to begin with that and then probably work our way downwards. Now, I've only ever had one sip of a martini. Does anyone actually like martinis? I mean, no hate. They're such a pretty drink. And I ordered one because I wanted to feel like an adult. Um, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I don't know how people drink those things. It's just fire fuel in a glass. And you know what? It actually is. So I don't know why I said that. It is fire fuel in a glass. So props to you. If anything, I'm actually jealous if you enjoy these because you look very classy, and I want you to know that. Having made my worry, anyone, I just can't speak. The last few days, I have had the worst, like, mumbling problem. I don't know why I chose these days to film my voiceovers. I've had to film some. Maybe that's why it is. Anyways, as I make my way around this glass, this back section, you can see that I'm working light to dark. I started out with that light green, went over the top with indigo for those darker shadows on the right, and now I'm just filling in the olives, which I had to kind of resist for a little bit at the beginning of the painting. They're obviously the star of the painting, so I was trying to save it for more of a last thing, and I just kind of started painting them right at the beginning. So my method for tackling these was to dip my brush in some water, dip it in my paint like the darkest shadows in the shape that they appeared. So you can see I put this like line across it. I kind of sectioned it off where that shadow is. And there's a highlight in between that I used water to blend with, just like that. And then there's that little circle that I don't remember if I put red there or if that's just a white highlight. I think it's both. So I saved that section of white paper for that. And then I'm moving on to the next one. And this one's going to be slightly darker. And what's interesting about these olives is, like, olives you would think green, and they are green, but they are very muted green. And if anything, in this picture, in this painting, they appeared a little bit red. So I mixed a lot of burnt sienna into my olive green mixture, and I was really pleasantly surprised by that combination. I thought that the two warms might make a muddy color, but I think that they actually brought out the vibrancy in each other, so I was really happy with that. Now, I would say it was right about here when I was really kicking myself in the leg for choosing this reference because I chose a crystal glass, and there are so many different types of martini glasses, and plenty of them are smooth, but I chose one that was very detailed, a very detailed crystal glass. So it's beautiful, but it's very difficult to paint. And my method of tackling it was essentially to mix up a mixture arranging between this like blue-gray color and a warmer yellow, and made a bunch of different mixtures like that and started painting essentially lines and triangles, leaving out a little sliver of white between each shape. And I wasn't being too specific about where I was putting these shapes or how big they were or what shape they actually were. I was just kind of more concerned about the general direction of the lines and trying to make sure I left enough gaps in between to make it dynamic. So you really don't have to be super anal about making sure it's all the right placement. I mean, you can see mine shapes aren't anything crazy. It's more just because there's that play between the shadow and the sliver of light in between that gives it that crystal look. multiple times during this painting, I'm stepping away, zooming out, and making sure that what I'm painting is accurate to what I want it to look like. So here I'm zooming out, kind of overviewing the top of the glass that I've painted, kind of trying to visualize how the rest of the glass would look based on that top section, and then I move accordingly. So all the crystal sections that are in this bottom part underneath the liquid that I'm painting in this section are going to be much bigger lines than we were painting kind of up above that area where you could see we were painting before. These are going to be much longer lines because this is at the, I don't even know what it's called on the glass, but where it bows out. I should go look that up real quick. Okay, I'm back. It's literally just called the bowl. So on the bowl of the glass, the sections of lines are going to be a lot bigger because they're all kind of moving in this general V-shaped direction, which was pretty easy to mimic. And again, I'm starting light with the shadows because if I place them wrong, then it's not that big of a deal, and I can still have somewhat of a light highlight there. And the darker I go, the more specific I want to be with where I'm placing my shadows. No, I hate that. Don't you hate when you're listening to someone talk? Oh my god, it's almost happening again now. Like when you're listening to someone talk, and you can tell they need to clear their throat, and they just aren't. Whoa. That's a big pet peeve of mine. Anyways, I'm just going to be continuously painting triangles here until this glass looks more like a glass. So the first most exciting thing to paint with this painting was the olives. And the second thing that I wanted to paint was the stem. The stem is always fun to paint. And I do know that section of the glass. I do know what that's called because it's like, what else would that be called? The leg, maybe? I don't know. But I love painting stems of glasses. It's so fun. Just lots of lines. And then there's usually like a gap in the middle where there isn't any shadow. And it's just like dense glass. So that's how I painted it. And I would almost argue that this bottom section of the glass is probably my least favorite part to paint. It's not that difficult. There's not really any detail in it, but for some reason, it can just look off if I paint it wrong. I don't know what it is. Maybe it can look flat sometimes because the shadows are more minimal or less visible, but they are still there. So I'm using a lot of colors that are closer in range to each other. I diluted a little bit of sepia, mixed in some lemon yellow to get this nice light beige, and I'm just going around the base again, kind of leaving out a little bit of areas of highlights, starting super light, and then I just work my way darker, and I'm moving my brush in the same motion that the glass is formed, so it makes it easier to paint the form. So I'm going to be doing a lot of like circular oval motions with my brush to achieve the same look. Okay, remember when I said the stem was my second favorite thing to paint? I think I lied about all of it. I think that the first thing I ever wanted to paint was this red thing. And now that it's basically the last thing I'm painting, I think that my theory was correct. Because usually I save the most interesting thing for myself for last. I think it's just kind of sad that this little red dot was the most interesting thing for me, I guess. But it is where your eye goes. I mean, I think they put it there for a reason. It bounces off the green of the olives, you know? It's a little cute piece, but I was definitely very excited to paint it. Red is one of my favorite colors, and I find a way to incorporate it into most of my paintings, especially this really bright vermilion red. I'm starting to put in the darkest shadows that I'm seeing because most of my shadows have been mapped out with the lighter colors, and so now it's time to go in with the details in a darker color like sepia or indigo. And not everyone likes to go this dark with their colors because they argue it kind of works against the purpose of watercolor, which is luminosity. Or some people will argue that's the purpose, I don't know, but I really don't. I like my watercolors to look like oil paintings, honestly. I do appreciate watercolor for the medium it is. I love translucency. I love when other people do it and use it in that way. I just like to use it this way. I like really high contrast art, and if anything, I almost like a more illustrative style with outlines and dark shadows. If you don't like having dark shadows, don't use stuff like black, indigo, sepia. Those are really dark pigments. Maybe exchange those for like an ultramarine blue or cobalt blue, because blues are really great for maintaining luminosity with watercolor, especially in your shadow areas. As we're nearing the end, it is finally time to take off this latex that we put on at the very beginning. I'm using this, let me look it up again, rubber cement to get off my liquid latex. This tool is great, guys. I honestly avoided getting one of these for the longest time, and I would use like brush ends and rubber erasers and other things to get it off, and it just doesn't work as well. And this thing is like 99 cents. I really don't know why I avoided getting one for so long, but I'm glad I got one. Right now I'm using my Kolinsky Sable brush. It's a smaller round brush, maybe like a size 0 even, and I did some outlining, and now I'm putting in a background. I really didn't put much thought into the background. I knew I wanted a vintage feel, so stripes are always my go-to, and I love a dark green, and it goes really well with this painting. So I did a cream and green background that I think really complements the vintage vibe, if you get what I mean. This is definitely my top 5 favorite paintings I've ever made, and if you really like it too, I'll be selling the original along with prints and a whole series of other cocktail paintings in my shop update in a week, this Saturday, September. Oh my god, guys, I'm stuck. December 27th. Do not miss it. Set a reminder. Don't be like me and think it's in September. And I want to thank you all for watching and following along. If you did, it wasn't really much of a tutorial and more of a process, but I'm just happy for all the support that you guys give me. I couldn't be more grateful, and if you'd like to see any more of my content, I do post over on my socials, on my Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon page, which will all be linked in the description below. Bye, guys!